The man with the paper budget was raining that night, but not the soft kind. It was the kind of rain that made everything seem heavier. The clouds hung low over the city, and the lights from the street lamps flickered like they were tired. Inside, a small McDonald's just off the highway. A young man named Jake stood behind the counter, wiping it down for the third time that hour. He was new, only 2 weeks into the job, and already knew the exact sound the soda machine made when it jammed. His hands were sore and his feet ached from standing since 5. He didn't complain. He needed this job. Every dollar he earned helped keep the electricity on back home where his mother and little sister slept. It was almost closing time. And the place was empty except for a lone customer sitting near the window, eating fries one at a time like he had nowhere else to be. Jake had noticed him earlier, walking in with nothing but a soaked paper bag and a calm smile. He wasn't dressed fancy. In fact, his jacket was worn at the edges, and his shoes looked like they'd been through years of walking. There was something about him, though. Something that didn't match the look. His eyes were sharp but kind, and every time he thanked Jake for refilling his coffee, he did it like he meant it. You sure you don't want a meal or something? Jake asked gently, not wanting to sound like he was judging Dot. The man looked up, paused for a moment, then smiled again. Just the coffee. Thank you. Jake didn't press. But the guy had been sitting there for over an hour, sipping the same cup. He hadn't ordered food, and Jake could tell by the way he looked at the fries on the tray of another customer earlier that he was hungry. Something inside Jake shifted. Maybe it was the way the man reminded him of his own father, who used to smile like that when things were hard. Maybe it was just that Jake had been on the other side of the counter before, hoping someone might show him a little kindness. Either way, he made a decision. He walked to the back, grabbed a fresh burger, a pack of fries, and a hot apple pie. He placed it all neatly on a tray, walked over to the man, and set it down. On the house, Jake said quietly. The man looked at the food, then at Jake. Are you sure? Yeah. Just enjoy it. For a moment, there was nothing but silence between them. Then the man nodded slowly, like he understood more than he was letting on. Thank you, he said, in a tone that felt like it carried. Wait, you have no idea what this means. Jake smiled, shrugged, and went back to cleaning. But the moment stayed with him. 10 minutes later, the man stood up, gathered his things, and left without another word. But something strange happened. He left the paper bag behind. Curious, Jake walked over and picked it up. Inside, carefully folded, was a used napkin and a note written in neat handwriting. Kindness doesn't go unnoticed. That was all it said. The next morning, Jake was called into the manager's office. His boss, a stern woman named Carla, who didn't like surprises, had a folder open in front of her. You gave away food last night? She asked, not looking up. Jake swallowed. Yes. I know it wasn't allowed. I'm sorry. You looked hungry? Carla stared at him for a long time. We have rules for a reason. You can't just give away company property. I understand. It won't happen again. No, she said flatly. It won't, because you're fired. The words hit like a punch to the stomach. Jake didn't speak. He couldn't. The room spun for a moment as he tried to process what had just happened. All for one meal. All for one moment of compassion. He packed his things, walked out without saying goodbye, and stepped into the morning sunlight that didn't feel warm anymore. He didn't know what to tell his mom. She was already working 2 jobs. He had been helping cover rent. Now what? As he walked toward the bus stop, lost in thought, he heard someone call out, Hey, excuse me. Jake turned around. It was the man from last night, the one with the calm smile and a paper bag. You okay? The man asked. Jake gave a small, forced laugh. Not really. Got fired. They didn't like that I gave you food. The man looked at him for a long time, then said something that didn't make sense at first. What if I told you I wasn't just some guy needing a meal? Jake frowned. What do you mean? The man reached into his pocket and pulled out a card. It was simple. White with clean black letters. Sundar Pichai. CEO, Alphabet, Inc. Jake blinked. He read it again. And again. The name looked familiar, but his brain was still foggy from everything that had just happened. Wait, are you saying you're the Sundar Pichai? The Google guy? The man nodded. Yes, I was passing through. I like to visit places quietly. See how people are treated when no one knows who I am. Jake stared at him, unable to form words. Last night you made a choice, Sundar continued. You didn't know who I was. You didn't expect anything in return. You were just kind, and I believe in rewarding that. Jake finally found his voice. But I got fired. Maybe that job wasn't the one meant for you. Maybe something better is waiting. Sundar looked him in the eyes. What if I said I have a place for someone like you? Not in a restaurant. In a program, something I run quietly, for people who show art. People who do the right thing when no one's watching. Jake didn't speak. He couldn't. His world had just been flipped twice in one day. Take a few days, Sundar said, handing him a second card with a number on the back. Call this if you're ready to start a different journey. And with that, Sundar turned and walked away. Jake stood there, the card in his hand, the wind tugging at his jacket, the weight of the morning still pressing down. Only now there was something else, a flicker of light, of hope, of something that felt like the beginning of a story much bigger than he could have imagined. Asterisk, the number on the card. 3 days passed. Not a single hour went by without Jake pulling the card out of his pocket, staring at the name, tracing the numbers on the back, and then slipping it away again like it burned his fingers. He hadn't called, not because he didn't want to, but because his world had been quiet before Sundar. Pichai walked into that McDonald's, quiet in the way old shoes are quiet worn in, predictable and just barely holding together. Now everything felt like it might break apart if he made the wrong move. His mom had noticed something was off. She always did. She didn't ask directly. She knew he didn't like to talk much when his thoughts were heavy, but one night while washing dishes, she said softly, sometimes life gives you a door. Not everyone walks through it, even when it's open. Jake didn't reply. But later that night, he sat on the roof of their apartment building, holding the card under the city sky, wondering if maybe that was the door she meant. He dialed the number. His hand was shaking slightly, the phone cold against his ear. 1 ring, 2, 3, then a voice. Hello? It wasn't Sundar. It was someone else, female, polite, warm in a way that felt practiced, but not fake. This is Jake. I was told to call this number by Sundar Pichai. A pause. Then, yes, Jake. We've been expecting you. Expecting me? Jake almost laughed, but all he said was, okay. So what happens now? Someone will pick you up tomorrow. Morning at 9. Bring nothing except a change of clothes and your mind open. The call ended. No details. No instructions. Just those words. The next morning, a black car pulled up in front of Jake's apartment. Exactly at 9. The driver didn't say much, only opened the door and nodded. Jake climbed in, heart thudding, and watched the familiar streets of his neighborhood melt away behind the tinted windows. They drove for nearly an hour, out of the city, past the highways, into the hills where cell service blinked in and out like it was uncertain. The road eventually curved toward a gated entrance that looked more like a retreat than a corporate campus. Trees lined the path, and the buildings were low and modern, surrounded by silence. The car stopped in front of a glass-walled structure. The driver gestured for Jake to go inside. The room was quiet, filled with soft light and a subtle scent of fresh coffee. There were no computers, no nameplates. Only a single woman sitting at a round table, her hands folded. You, Jake, she said, double quotes. Yeah. I'm Lena. I run this program. What is this place? Jake asked. His voice sounded small in the room. Lena smiled gently. This is where we take people who are overlooked. People who show something that doesn't always appear on. Resume? We train them, test them, help them discover what they're capable of. And Sundar sent me here. She nodded. He noticed you. And that means something. He doesn't do that often. But I'm not I didn't even go to college, Jake said, his words tumbling out. I'm just a guy who gave someone a meal. You gave someone dignity, Lena corrected. And when we talk about building the future, people like you are the ones we want shaping it. Jake sat down slowly. This still didn't feel real, but the chair was solid. The table, smooth beneath his hands. You'll stay here for 6 weeks, Lena continued. There will be others like you. Different backgrounds, same spark. We'll challenge you, teach you. Some of it will be hard. Some of it will feel impossible. But you'll grow, he nodded slowly. Something in him stirred. Not excitement, something deeper. Like the pieces of a puzzle he didn't know he was solving were finally starting to fit. The first week nearly broke him. Every morning started before the sun. Workouts in the cold. Long reading assignments. Team challenges that left him exhausted and questioning why he was even chosen. The others in the program were older, sharper, quicker with answers. One had been in the military. Another had built a nonprofit from nothing. Jake felt out of place. Like a kid who accidentally wandered into the wrong classroom and was too scared to leave. But there was one class he liked. It wasn't on coding or strategy. It was called story. Each day, they sat in a circle and told real stories from their lives. Mistakes they'd made. Regrets. Moments they weren't proud of. No judgment. Just honesty. On the 5th day, it was Jake's turn. He hesitated, heart thudding. Then he spoke. My dad walked out when I was 10. He left a note, said he couldn't take the pressure anymore. I watched my mom fall apart quietly. She never complained, but I saw it in the way she stared at her hands while waiting for the bus. I started working when I was 16. I've done a lot of small jobs. Fast food, stock rooms. Nothing that mattered much. I always thought if I just kept my head down, things would get better. But they didn't. His voice cracked. That night, when I gave that guy food, I wasn't trying to be a hero. I just remembered how my mom used to look at the fridge when it was almost empty. How she used to say, it's okay, we'll manage, even when I knew she was hungry too. I didn't think it would cost me everything. The room was quiet. No one laughed. No one dismissed him. And in that moment, Jake realized something. The truth had power. Not the kind that shouted. The kind that connected. That night, he slept better than he had in months. By week 3, something shifted. Jake began to thrive. Not because he was the smartest, but because he listened, because he cared, because he didn't pretend to be someone else. In a group challenge to redesign a community center in a struggling neighborhood. It was Jake who suggested talking to the people who lived there first, not the developers, not the city council. The people. How can we fix a place we don't understand? Yes. His team won that round. The judges said it wasn't just about the design. It was about the respect behind it. After the session, Lena pulled him aside. You're starting to see it now, aren't you? She asked. See what? That you don't have to be someone else to be valuable. Jake didn't respond right away. But deep inside, he felt something lift. Like a weight he didn't even know he'd been carrying was finally beginning to slide off. Near the end of the program, Sundar returned. It was the first time Jake had seen him since that rainy night. He walked into the classroom like he belonged. There, dressed simply, eyes kind as ever. He sat down across from Jake. You've done well, he said. I didn't think I would, Jake admitted. Most people don't, Sundar replied. Until they do. They talked for a long time. About failure, fear, pressure, about how the world often rewards the loudest voices, but the strongest ones are often quiet. And then Sundar said something Jake would never forget. What you did at that McDonald's wasn't about charity. It was about character, and that's the foundation of everything I built. He handed Jake another card. But this one was different. Internship offer. Google Human Insight Lab. Your journeys. Just starting, Sundar said. But you're no longer walking alone. As Sundar stood to leave, he turned back. Also, he added with a small smile, Carla, your old manager, she got a surprise letter last week. From corporate. Jake blinked. What kind of letter? The kind that reminds people every job is a chance to treat others with humanity. That night, as Jake packed his small bag and stared out the window of the dorm-style room that had become his home, he thought about everything that had changed. Not just the future ahead, but the way he saw himself. He was no longer just a kid behind the counter. He was someone who had been seen, chosen, believed in. But as he lay down to sleep, a new thought crept into his mind. A quiet whisper of doubt. What if I fail again? He didn't know it yet, but that question would lead him into the toughest challenge of his life, one that would test not only his skills, but his heart, asterisk the glass door and the hidden room in his. First day at the Google campus, Jake felt like he was dreaming with his eyes wide open. The buildings were so bright, they almost glowed in the sunlight. Glass and steel reflecting the sky like they were trying to catch clouds. People biked between buildings like they were floating, headphones in, coffee cups balanced, dressed in ways that made Jake feel both underdressed and overdressed at the same time. No one was in a rush, but everything seemed to move faster than he was used to. There was energy in the air, the kind that buzzed just beneath the surface of every conversation. He stood outside the main building, staring at the glass door, and took a deep breath. He adjusted the strap on his worn backpack, the same one he'd used back when he worked at McDonald's. It had one broken zipper and a stain he never managed to scrub out. But he kept it as a reminder. When he stepped inside, the air smelled faintly of coffee and possibility. Someone greeted him with a soft smile and a badge that had his name printed on it in lowercase. Jake Thomas, Insight Lab intern. No one looked at him like he didn't belong. No one asked for his degree or resume. It felt strange. It felt like trust. He was assigned a desk in a quiet corner near a large window. Outside, he could see the trees swaying, people talking over lunch at the outdoor tables, laughter drifting through the glass like music from another world. The first few days were overwhelming. There were new systems to learn, software he'd never heard of, meetings where people spoke in words that felt like riddles. He kept a notebook filled with doodles and definitions, writing everything down like a student trying to catch up in a class he wasn't supposed to be in. And then there was Maya. She was another intern, tall, sharp, with eyes that noticed everything. She wore black boots and confidence like armor. Her desk was 2 rows behind his, but she made sure to say something to him every day. Sometimes it was a joke. Sometimes it was a question that made him think harder than he wanted to. She challenged him, not in a cruel way, but in the way someone does when they expect more from you than you expect from yourself. On a second Friday, after a brainstorming session that left Jake's head spinning, Mia caught up with him by the vending machines. "You're quiet," she said, sipping a green smoothie. "I'm learning," he replied. "Good," she nodded. "Learn fast. They don't keep everyone." "What do you mean?" She leaned closer. "Only 2 interns from our group get long-term offers. The rest go home with a certificate and a pat on the back." Jake's stomach twisted. He hadn't known that. "And don't look so scared," she added with a smirk. "You've got something. I can see it. Just don't get lost trying to be like them. Find your way. You'll need it." Then she walked away, leaving him alone with her words ringing in his ears. It was late one evening, after most people had gone home, that Jake made a discovery that would change everything. He had stayed behind to finish a project. The office was quiet except for the soft hum of machines and the occasional creak of air vents. He liked it this way. The silence helped him think. He got up to stretch his legs, wandered down the hallway, and noticed a door that didn't match the others. It had no label, no badge scanner, just a single frosted pane of glass and a small round doorknob. He paused. Something about it tugged at him. He turned the knob. It wasn't locked. Inside was a room not much bigger than a closet with shelves, filled with old notebooks, printouts, hand-drawn maps of ideas. It looked like a room that had been used and then forgotten, like a place where someone once thought deeply and then disappeared. On the table in the center was a folder, thick, worn, labeled only with a small red sticker. Jake shouldn't have opened it. But curiosity pulled harder than caution. Inside were pages of research, real data, reports from experiments, Notes written in the margins in small, fast handwriting. He read one dot, then another dot, then he stopped because what he was reading didn't add up. It described a program, not a public one, not something you'd find on the company's official page. It talked about human behavioral tracking, tests done without clear consent. A project that predicted user decisions not just from online behavior, but from personal stress markers, time of day, and even facial recognition patterns. One phrase kept repeating, predict before intention. Jake sat down, hard dot. He flipped to the final page. There was a name at the bottom. Not Sundar's. Someone else's. Daniel Brenner, director, predictive. Systems. He'd heard the name. High up. Powerful. Rarely seen. Someone who only showed up in meetings when something big was happening. Jake closed the folder and sat in the dark for a long time. He didn't know exactly what the project was. But something felt wrong. Very wrong. It wasn't about improving user experience. It was about control. About knowing what someone was going to do before they knew it themselves. Asterisk the next morning. He tried to ask questions carefully, gently. Does the Insight Lab ever touch predictive systems? He asked Maya during lunch. Her eyes narrowed. Why are you asking that? Just curious. Don't be, she said, her voice flat. Not here. Not about that. Why? She looked around, lowered her voice. Some things are buried for a reason. And digging too deep gets you? Noticed in the wrong ways. He nodded. Didn't say more. Asterisk. But he couldn't stop thinking about it. A few days later, Lena called him. How's it going? She asked warmly. It's good, Jake said. Just a lot to process. Good. Stay sharp. He hesitated. Can I ask you something? Of course. Do you know Daniel Brenner? The pause on the line was long. Why do you ask? She said finally. I found some papers. Old ones. From a room near the south wing. They talked about prediction, tracking, before intention. Lena was quiet. I didn't mean to go snooping. Jake added quickly. It didn't feel right. When Lena spoke again, her voice was calm but serious. That room isn't part of your program. I know. Leave it alone, Jake. But I'm serious. Her tone dropped. Like stone in water. There are levels to this company. And you're in a good one right now. Don't climb where you're not invited. She hung up. Jake sat still for a long time. The message was clear. Stop. Look away. Be quiet. But something inside him refused. Because deep down, he knew something. If he stayed silent now, he would never forgive himself later, and he didn't know it yet. But someone had already noticed what he found. Someone who didn't like being watched. Asterisk. The ally in the elevator sky was overcast that morning, but not in the way that brings rain. It was the kind of gray that made the world feel like it had been drained of sound. Jake sat at his desk, staring at his computer screen, but he wasn't seeing the words. Not really. His thoughts were louder than the quiet room around him. Ever since that night in the hidden room, he felt eyes on him. Not literal ones. There were no cameras in the places he went, no security guards following his steps, but there was a sense. A tension in the air. Like the silence before a door creaks open. Maya hadn't spoken to him in days. She looked at him differently now. Not with the playful challenge from before, but with warning in her eyes. Like she knew something was coming and wished he hadn't stepped so close to the edge. Jake couldn't stop thinking about the words he had read. Predict before intention. What scared him most wasn't the technology. It was how invisible the manipulation could become. If a system knew what people wanted before they even realized it, then what happened to choice? To freedom? It was like someone was writing the ending of your story before you even opened the first page. That thought stayed with him like a shadow. The message came at noon. He was eating in the courtyard. Headphones in, half listening to a podcast about decision making. His phone buzzed. No contact. Just a text. You're not wrong. Meet me. Elevator 6. Parking level B3. 10 minutes. Come alone. His heart skipped. He looked around. No one was watching him, at least not openly. He pocketed his phone, left his. Lunch unfinished and walked back inside, trying to keep his pace normal. Elevator 6 was rarely used. It sat at the far end of the building, near the older research wing where some of the less glamorous departments worked. The hallway leading to it always smelled faintly of metal and printer ink. When he reached it, the doors opened as if someone had already pressed the button. Jake stepped inside. He pressed B3. The elevator began to move, humming quietly as it dropped beneath the surface of the building. When the doors slid open, the floor was darker than he expected. Dim lights buzzed on the ceiling, and the walls were lined with unmarked doors and old signs from earlier phases of the campus. A man stood waiting. Tall, older, hair gray at the temples. Sharp eyes, calm posture. "You're Jake," he said, not asking. "Yeah, who are you?" "Someone who used to believe in the same thing you're starting to question." He gestured for Jake to follow. They walked past 2 doors, turned into a small storage room filled with boxes and cables. Once inside, the man closed the door behind them and turned on a small desk lamp that cast a yellow circle of light. Between them, "My name is Elias. I was one of the original architects of the predictive system." Jake's eyes widened. "The one Daniel runs?" Elias nodded slowly. "It wasn't always his. We built it as a tool to improve services, make life easier. The idea was to reduce friction in daily choices, emails you needed before you asked, reminders you forgot to set. It was small at first." "What changed?" "Power," Elias said simply. "Once we realized how deep the model could go, it stopped being about helping users. It became about guiding them. Guiding, steering, nudging, subtle changes in order, timing, color, placement, until people believed they were choosing freely when the choice was never theirs." Jake felt a chill crawl down his spine. "That's not just tech. That's control." Elias nodded again. "That's why I left. Or more accurately, why I was pushed out." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you opened a door no intern should find. And now you're in it whether you want to be or not." Jake's voice was low. "So what do I do?" Elias slid a small USB drive across the desk. "This contains a part of the original code, not all of it. Just enough to prove what the system was designed to do and how it was altered." "Why give this to me?" "Because Daniel's been cleaning house, shutting down access points, rewriting history. If the truth is going to survive, someone has to carry it forward." Jake stared at the USB. It felt heavier than metal. It felt like responsibility. "I don't have any power," Jake said. "You're the only one with nothing to lose," Elias said, "and the one they'll least expect." That night, Jake didn't sleep. He stared at the drive on his desk, then at his laptop. Part of him wanted to plug it in, see it with his own eyes, confirm that he wasn't being played. But he remembered what Maya had said. Some things are buried for a reason. So instead, he reached for his phone and texted her. "Can we talk?" She replied within seconds. "Where?" The rooftop was quiet, as always. The city lights blinked in the distance, and stars fought to be seen through the haze. Maya arrived in a black hoodie and her usual boots. She looked at him, then at the USB in his hand. "You opened it?" She said. Double quotes, "No. But someone gave it to me." "Elias." He nodded. She walked over and sat on the ledge. "I knew him before he disappeared. He was the only one who used to ask why we were building the things we built. Everyone else asked how fast. Why didn't you say anything before?" "Because I've seen what happens when you try." Jake sat next to her, the cold air brushing his skin. "I can't unsee it now. I don't want to play a part in something like this." "So don't," she said. "But be smart about it." "You're not dealing with amateurs. You're dealing with people who shape the tools that shape the world." Elias said. "This is just the beginning. That Daniel's rewriting everything." Maya looked out across the lights. "He is. And if you go at him directly, you'll lose. They'll spin it, discredit you, erase your trail." "Then what do I do?" She turned to him. "You find the story, the real one, and you find someone who can tell it where the whole world can hear." Jake's mind raced, not through panic. Through clarity. He didn't need to take down Daniel. He needed the truth to be undeniable. He needed proof, context, something bigger than a flash drive. He needed to go back to where it all began. Back to the McDonald's single quotes. Back to the moment. Everything changed. He didn't know what he'd find, but he knew the story. Wasn't over. Not yet. Asterisk. The return to the booth by the window. It had been weeks since Jake last walked down that familiar sidewalk. The cracks in the pavement, the way the lamplight curved across the bus shelter, even the flickering neon sign above the McDonald's, all of it felt frozen in time. But Jake was different now. His body moved the same, but something in him had shifted. He had seen behind a curtain most people didn't even know existed, and he wasn't sure he could close it again. He pushed open the door. The scent of fryer oil and warm bread hit him like a memory. A woman with tired eyes stood behind the counter. Not Carla, she was gone, he'd heard, but someone new, someone young. Someone who looked exactly the way he had looked the night he gave Sundar a free meal. It was strange being back. Stranger. Still, that nothing had changed. He sat at the same table Sundar had chosen that rainy night. The one by the window where the city looked distant and soft. For a moment, he didn't know what he was doing here. There was no reason to believe this place held any answers. But his instincts told him to return. There was something about that night, something that didn't quite fit. He pulled out his notebook and flipped to a page he'd been scribbling in for days. He had listed everything he remembered about the interaction. Sundar's clothes, the bag, the way he spoke, even the exact sentence he had written on the napkin. Kindness doesn't go unnoticed. Jake whispered it to himself again. Then again, what did it mean? He ordered a coffee, black, just like Sundar had. The same cashier brought it to his table. She smiled, then hesitated. Were you the guy who used to work here? Yeah, Jake said quietly. And that was me. Her eyes widened. I heard about you. The free meal. The letter. People said someone important came in that night. Jake looked up. Do you remember who? She shook her head. It was before my time. But there's a guy who might. Ernie. Night shift janitor. He's been here forever. Jake leaned forward. Is he around? Comes in after 11 most nights. Stays till close. Jake checked the time. 10:44. He nodded. Stayed in the booth. And waited. Ernie walked with a limp and wore a beanie even indoors. His hands were covered in scars from years of hard work, but his eyes were sharp. The kind that paid attention when others didn't. When Jake introduced himself, Ernie looked him over once, then smiled. You're the one who gave that man a burger, he said. I remember you. You remember him too? Course I do. Sat there quiet as a ghost. Thanked you like you'd just given him gold. Jake reached into his bag and pulled out a printout. It was Sundar's official company photo. Was it him? Ernie looked at it for a long time. Ben nodded slowly. Yeah. He looked different, older in this picture, but same eyes. Jake leaned forward. Did he say anything else? Do anything strange? Ernie scratched his beard. He left the bag. I know, I saw it. Ernie shook his head. No. Another bag. I didn't say anything then. But I saw him pull a second bag from under his jacket and slide it beneath the table when he thought no one was looking. It had a sticker on it. Red. Triangle. Shaped. Jake froze. Triangle. Yeah, I thought. Maybe it was trash. But when I picked it up later, it was gone. Jake's mind world. Triangle sticker. Like the red mark on the folder in the hidden room at Google. Not a coincidence. You sure? Jake asked. Positive. I remember. Shapes better than faces. Always have. Jake thanked him and stepped outside into the cold night air. He called Maya. Triangle sticker. He said the moment she answered. What? Sundar left a second bag under the table. Red triangle sticker. Just like the folder. Maya didn't speak for a few seconds. Then she said quietly, I think I know where that leads. The next day, Maya and Jake met outside an old warehouse just west of the campus. It didn't belong to Google, not publicly. But there were quiet whispers among staff. The kind of thing no one said in meetings, but everyone heard over coffee. It used to be a sandbox lab, Maya said, zipping up her jacket, where prototypes went before approval. Technically shut down years ago, but I have a friend who says Daniel still uses it. Off books. They approached the side entrance, not the front. Mia entered a code on a keypad hidden behind a rusted panel. Jake didn't ask how she knew it. Inside, the warehouse was dark, cold, and buzzing with the faint sound of old servers still breathing. Most of the room was empty, but in the back corner stood a locked cabinet and a desk with a single monitor. Above the cabinet, painted faintly on the metal, was a triangle. Red dot Jake, single quotes, S pulse quicken. Dot Maya found a set of keys taped under the desk. She tried 3 before the lock clicked. Dot inside were several files, each one labeled with a date and a number. But the one that mattered was marked with a name, Project. Prism. Jake opened it. Dot inside were diagrams, models, heat maps of human brain response to digital stimuli. Not just data from users, but from test subjects. Facial response, pulse even, micro movements of the eyes, and near the back of the folder. Stapled onto the final page was a scanned image of a napkin. Kindness doesn't go. Unnoticed. Jake stared at it. Maya read over his shoulder. What is this? Jake's voice was a whisper. He left it for me. But it wasn't just a thank you. It was a breadcrumb. A marker. Maya frowned. You think he wanted you to find this? Maybe not all of it, but something. Enough. But why? Jake sat down. Everything suddenly made a strange kind of sense. The hidden room. The folder. The drive Elias gave him. Sundar had started the program. He had helped build the tools. Then something changed. Maybe he backed out. Maybe he tried to shut it down. Maybe Daniel took it further, and maybe, just maybe, Sundar had used that night at McDonald's not just to test Jake's kindness, but to pass him a message. A mission. Someone will believe you if you give them a reason to. Jake closed the file. Breath shaking. He knew what he had to do next. Not run. Not hide, but speak. To someone outside the system. Someone who could publish the truth and make the world listen. He turned to Mia. Double quotes. Do you know anyone? Press? Anyone who'd take a risk for a real story? She thought for a moment, then nodded. Double quotes. I know one. Then it's time. He picked up the folder. We take this public. Maya stared at him. You sure? No, Jake said honestly. But it's the only thing that feels right. As they walked into the night, neither of them saw the car parked across the street. The engine was off, but someone inside was watching. Asterisk, the silence before the storm. Didn't sleep that night. That Jake and Maya stayed in a tiny motel off the freeway. The kind with flickering hallway lights and a vending machine. That hadn't worked since 2017. The air conditioner rattled like bones. But it was the only place Jake felt remotely safe. Far enough from campus. Cheap enough not to ask questions. He paced the room barefoot, the carpet scratchy beneath his feet, while Maya sat on the edge of the bed, typing quietly into her encrypted messaging app. On the table between them sat the folder labeled Project Prism, the USB Elias had given him, and a napkin creased and worn bearing 5 simple words. Kindness doesn't go unnoticed. For Jake. Those words were no longer a thank you. They were a warning, a prophecy, a test. He thought about how everything had started. A free meal, a stranger with quiet eyes, and now he was holding secrets, powerful enough to destabilize one of the most influential corporations in the world. And someone out there knew he had them. Maya single quotes S contact was a journalist named Lena Hart, not the same Lena who had helped run the training program, but someone from Maya's past, an investigative reporter who had once brought down $1 billion hedge fund for insider trading. She'd lost her platform for it, lost friends, lost trust. But she had earned something else, respect. And fear. Lena agreed to meet the next day in a coffee shop on the edge of the city where no cameras scanned your face when you walked in. She arrived with a small camera, a legal pad, and eyes that had seen more truth than most people could handle. Maya handed her the folder. Lena opened it. Read in silence. then slowly lifted her gaze to Jake. Do you understand what this is? She asked. I think so. You're not just revealing corporate misuse of data. You're challenging the foundation of every algorithm that influences the modern world. If this gets out, people will know what's being done to them. Jake said, they'll have a chance to push back. Lena studied him carefully. And you think that chance is enough? It's more than we had yesterday. She sat back. Her expression softened, just slightly. You're brave, she said. But they'll come for you when this goes public. Jake nodded. They already are. They planned the release carefully. Lena would run the story through 3 independent outlets. The data would be mirrored on encrypted servers across multiple countries. Backup drives would be mailed to select lawmakers. An anonymous report would go to human rights groups. Everything. Time to go live at 6 a.m. on a Monday. But 2 days before that, it happened. Maya was taken. It was just past midnight when Jake returned to the motel with coffee and found the door ajar. No sign of struggle. Her phone on the nightstand. The drive gone. He called Lena. They've got her, he said, panic rising like floodwater in his chest. Are you safe? She asked. I don't care about that. You should. I need to get her back. Lena was quiet for a long time. Then she said, there's one name left in your story. One person you haven't confronted. Jake knew before she said it. Sundar. He didn't go to the main campus. That would be suicide. Instead, he went to the same warehouse where he and Maya had uncovered Project Prism. It was dark now, but something told him he wasn't alone. He stepped inside, the silence pressing around him like a vacuum. The lights buzzed overhead. The same red triangle was painted on the cabinet. Untouched. And then he heard it. Footsteps. He turned. Sundar stood in the doorway, calm, collected, his expression unreadable. I knew you'd come back, Sundar said. Jake, single quotes, S voice trembled. Where is she? Safe for now. You use me, Jake said, voice rising. You set me up from the beginning. Sundar stepped closer. No, Jake. I chose you. That's different. You left the bag. The message. You wanted me to find Prism. I needed someone who still believed in truth, Sundar said quietly. I built that system with good intentions. Daniel corrupted it, but I couldn't stop him alone. So you sent me to do it for you? Yes, Sundar said simply. Because no one suspects the kind ones. No one fears them. But they should. Jake felt fury rise. Do you let Maya get taken? Sundar nodded once. Because she got too close too fast, but she's not gone. She's in a safe house. Daniel wanted leverage. I gave him the illusion that he had it. Jake stared at him. You played us? He whispered. I protected you. What are you really trying to do? Restore balance, Sundar said. Not destroy the system. Guide it back. I believe in information. But I also believe in choice. And we lost that somewhere. Jake stepped forward. Then help me finish this. Sundar held out a second drive. This has everything. Full source code. Full audit trail. Every version of Prism. Every decision Daniel signed off on. What about him? By the time your story goes live, he'll be gone. The board will see to that. So this was always your plan? No, Sundar said softly. My plan was to retire quietly. But you reminded me why we started this in the first place. To serve people, not control them. At dawn, Jake reunited with Maya in a quiet lot. Outside the city. She was tired but unharmed. She didn't speak much. She just hugged him, tight, and didn't let go. At 6 a.m. The story went live. Headlines blazed across the world. Google whistleblower leaks secret predictive program. Project Prism, users guided before intention. Is big tech reading your mind? The intern who exposed a digital empire reactions were immediate. Some people refused to believe it. Some said Jake was lying. Some called him a hero. But most of all, people asked questions. Real ones. The conversation had started, and it wouldn't stop.